Hey everyone, welcome to Mental Health Minute, where today we're going to dig into mindsets that can either help or hinder our growth and well-being. These two mindsets, fixed versus growth, terms coined by the researcher Carol Dweck. I'm Megan and I'm a licensed mental health counselor here at the Therapy Room. So let's start by getting into the weeds about the similarities and differences between these mindsets and take a look at the decades-long research. Let's start with fixed mindset. This mindset operates from the fundamental belief that the basic qualities we possess, like intelligence or talent, are fixed traits. You are born with a certain level of intelligence or a certain aptitude to a kind of talent, and that's it. Some of the traits in this way of thinking include believing that your IQ is innate, and while you may be able to bump it a few points here or there, you're kind of stuck with the set point that you've been given. While that doesn't seem too bad to believe, it can affect our thinking about all kinds of things, including challenges, learning new ideas, and how we approach mistakes. Those with a fixed mindset have resistance to challenges, new ideas, or branching out to new concepts because there's a possibility of failure associated with these things. Those with fixed mindsets believe that if they cannot do something, it's because they're not smart enough to do that. That's where that innate IQ comes from. So if they fail at a new challenge, it means they weren't smart enough to figure it out. Think of it like this. You fail a biology test. Someone with a fixed mindset might think, wow, I'm really not cut out to be in the sciences. To compound with that, there's a belief that practice and effort are in and of themselves a sign that you aren't smart or talented enough to be able to do it innately. I'll give a personal example of this. So I went to music school for undergrad, and when I was in music school, a lot of the people there were the most talented person from their town, from their school, from their high school. And now they're in college surrounded by all the other most talented people. For some, this was a driving force to practice more. But for those with a fixed mindset, they saw it as an indication that they weren't good enough or cut out to be a musician because they were no longer automatically the best. And this can result in all kinds of guilt. We see these setbacks not as temporary or momentary, we see them as permanent failures. I am clearly not talented enough to be with this group, so I should probably just quit. This guilt pairs with comparisons to others. Others are kind of an automatic threat to us, particularly if we see them as more successful at a task or a skill. So finally, we turn that inward with viewing feedback about improvement as a personal attack. Remember, we view our abilities as innate and natural, right? In direct relationship to our intelligence. So if you're telling me I'm not doing something well enough, you're telling me as a person I am not good enough. So we can tend to hide mistakes, feel ashamed of any kind of perceived failure, and general feelings of being unmotivated if we're not great at it right at the onset. So now let's take a look at a growth mindset. IQ is something to be cultivated and developed, where fixed saw hard work and effort as an indication of your lack of ability. Growth sees it as an essential component to building ability. There's a belief that failure is essential to growth. If we want to learn something new, we're going to have to fail as part of that process, right? Challenges are seen as opportunities. Let's take that same biology test. Someone with a growth mindset would not automatically question whether they were cut out for that field. They would say, wow, this concept was harder for me than I anticipated. I'm going to need to put more work and more energy into that area so I can get a better grade next time. Our growth mindset folks see effort and practice as essential to mastery. We can't be great unless we put in the hours. This pairs with acceptance of the inevitable failures, which I think is a huge piece of the puzzle. They're temporary setbacks that help guide you towards the areas that need a little bit more work and more focus to attain your overall goal. Instead of seeing others as competition, we see them as a source of inspiration and success. If we head back to the music school example, instead of seeing what we lack in comparison to others, we see the potential opportunities to learn from and challenge ourselves with new perspectives and new ways of improving our craft. Feedback is incredibly important to our growth mindset folks. They crave outside perspective to help build insight and develop that growth. So this mindset sees hard work and determination as the process to get what we want, where failures are merely opportunities to continue to improve. As mentioned earlier, Carol Dweck is considered the foundational researcher of these concepts. Dweck, along with her fellow researcher Grant, did a study in 2003 that took a look at these mindsets at work with college students. They categorized the students as either having a growth or a fixed mindset, and they tracked their academic progress as well as self-perception throughout a class. And this was a pre-med class they were in. Our growth folks had no decrease in motivation after receiving a bad grade. Remember, they see failure as an opportunity to guide where they need to go. Growth folks had a higher grade overall and higher performance over time, whether or not they experienced a poor grade. Now, our fixed mindset folks had lower intrinsic motivation. And this makes sense based on what we just talked about, right? If my intelligence is set and I can't really do anything to change it, then my motivators are all going to be external. Good grades in this scenario. So good grades were achieved by students, but only if they consistently got good grades. Those who failed a test had their confidence shaken, kind of like our music school example, right? If I fail this test, then I'm probably not cut out to be in this field. And those with a fixed mindset had more rumination, a loss of self-worth, and several even considered if they should actually continue pursuing that degree. So while listening to this episode, you might have found that you are leaning more towards one way or another, or found that some of these beliefs and behaviors sound pretty familiar. So we have some assessments included this week that can help us clearly define what mindset we're working with. And while a fixed mindset does need some support to start moving towards growth, it is something that can absolutely be accomplished. I, as a recovering fixed mindset person myself, is absolutely something that we can make changes toward and learn how to be in a growth mindset. I've included a quick mindset quiz that just takes a few moments to identify which mindset you most closely align with. Don't be discouraged. If you are labeled with a fixed mindset, that does not banish you to the realms of fixed thinking forever. And I say this earnestly and honestly as a former fixed mindset person myself. Do you find yourself internalizing failures? Do you find yourself avoiding certain opportunities because you worry that there are mistakes and then you'll be seen as incapable? Is your first instinct to hide mistakes? Do you feel shame and guilt when things don't go perfectly? These are fixed traits, and our awareness of them is the first step to making changes in how we perceive them internally. Today, let's challenge some of those fixed beliefs and give ourselves a little bit of grace to grow. Thanks, y'all.